A woman who knows her worth becomes dangerous because she stops asking for permission to exist. She no longer waits for someone to validate her dreams, approve her choices, or applaud her struggle. She learns that her value was never supposed to be measured by the opinions of others. And once she taps into that, she becomes unstoppable. You can't break a woman who finally realizes she was never meant to be small. There's a shift that happens inside her. Quiet at first, almost unnoticeable, but then it grows. The moment she starts seeing herself as enough, as capable, as deserving, everything around her starts to move differently. The things that once intimidated her don't shake her anymore. The people who tried to dim her light can't reach her anymore. The situations that once drained her no longer get access. She becomes intentional. She becomes aware. And she becomes powerful. When a woman knows her worth, she becomes difficult for the wrong people. She stops entertaining anyone who treats her like she's ordinary. She stops explaining herself to people who are committed to misunderstanding her. She stops shrinking so others can feel comfortable. She starts choosing peace instead of chaos, boundaries instead of guilt, and progress instead of pleasing. That's when she becomes dangerous, because she's no longer controlled by fear. She understands that losing people is not the same as losing herself. She understands that walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. She learns that every time she chooses herself, she levels up. Every time she says no to disrespect, she creates space for blessings. Every time she honors her voice, she steps deeper into her purpose. She becomes a woman who leads herself, and that kind of woman can lead anything. Her home, her vision, her success, her future. People feel it on her. The confidence, the discipline, the peace, the glow. Not the kind that comes from makeup or filters. The kind that comes from healing, from working on herself, from refusing to stay broke. She becomes magnetic, not because she's trying to impress anyone, but because she's finally aligned with who she really is. Power is quiet like that. It doesn't need noise. It just needs truth. A woman who knows her worth becomes dangerous not because she destroys others, but because she refuses to destroy herself anymore. She becomes the kind of woman who inspires her sisters, empowers her daughters, shifts her environment, and changes her whole story. She becomes proof that when you believe in yourself, you rewrite the rules. When you protect your energy, you elevate your life. And when you understand your value, you become untouchable. A woman who knows her worth cannot be controlled, manipulated, or diminished because her foundation becomes unshakable. The moment she realizes her value isn't up for negotiation, the world begins to see her differently. She walks with a presence that doesn't demand attention. It commands respect. Her confidence isn't loud, but it's undeniable. You can feel it in her silence, in her choices, in the way she carries herself. She no longer moves through life hoping someone will choose her. She chooses herself, and that decision alone makes her dangerous to anyone who ever benefited from her doubt. A woman's worth has never been tied to what she does for others, but for too long many women internalize the belief that they must prove themselves, prove their love, their effort, their strength, their loyalty. But when she wakes up and understands that her worth is inherent, not earned, that cycle ends. She stops chasing people who don't deserve her energy. She stops tolerating behavior that insults her spirit. She stops breaking herself into pieces just to keep the wrong people whole. That's when people start calling her difficult. But the truth is she's just done being used. Her worth becomes her armor. Not the kind that makes her cold, but the kind that makes her wise. She recognizes red flags faster. She trusts her intuition more deeply. She walks away earlier. She doesn't wait for someone to hurt her twice before she understands what they're capable of. Her clarity protects her in ways she once wished someone else would. It empowers her to take responsibility for her peace, her dreams, and her future. That's why she becomes a threat, not because she's aggressive, but because she is finally aware. A woman who knows her worth also becomes free. Free from the stories she told herself about being a too much or a not enough. Free from the expectations that drained her. Free from the labels placed on her by people who never understood her vision. Once she releases all that weight, she rises spiritually, mentally, emotionally. She starts making decisions that align with her destiny, not her fear. She begins to see herself as capable of building the life she wants, not simply surviving the life she has. That's shift changes everything. When she knows her worth, she becomes harder to influence because her identity is no longer shaped by outside voices. Compliments don't blind her. Criticism doesn't break her. She listens, but she chooses what she accepts. She is open, but not easily swayed. Her confidence becomes rooted in something deeper than appearances or applause. It's rooted in self-respect. She doesn't need the world to agree with her vision. She only needs the discipline to pursue it. People around her feel the difference. The ones who always admired her silently become inspired. The ones who took advantage start to fall away. The ones who underestimated her become uncomfortable. But she doesn't bend for any of them, because she finally understands that shrinking herself for others was the real danger all along. Now she grows unapologetically, and anyone who wants to stay in her life must grow too. A woman who knows her worth becomes dangerous because she is no longer accessible to negativity, manipulation, or disrespect. She is not led by fear, but by purpose. She becomes unstoppable because she knows exactly who she is, and once she knows that, no one can take it from her. She stops chasing approval and starts choosing growth, purpose, and power because she finally understands the truth. Validation from others is temporary, but validation from within is transformation. A woman who knows her worth no longer waits for someone to tell her she's worthy, capable, or enough. She already knows it. And once that realization settles deep into her spirit, she begins to move differently. She's not driven by fear of being judged or left behind. She's driven by the desire to evolve, to rise, and to honor the potential she carries inside her. When she stops chasing approval, she sets herself free from the invisible cage that relationships and her own insecurities build around her. She no longer edits herself to seem acceptable. She no longer lowers her voice to avoid being too loud. She no longer hides her brilliance because others feel threatened by it. She realizes that the world benefits more from her truth than from her silence. And with that awareness, she starts choosing the path that aligns with her growth, even when that path is hard, lonely, or misunderstood. Choosing growth means she becomes intentional about who she allows into her life. She stops entertaining people who drain her energy, question her dreams, or diminish her progress. She understands that growth requires space, and sometimes the only way to grow is to separate from what's holding her back. She no longer fears losing people because she knows the right people never require her to dim her light. She stops seeking approval from those who refuse to grow themselves. She surrounds herself with people who challenge her, support her, and believe in her future, not just her past. Purpose becomes her compass. She is no longer distracted by every opinion, every comparison, or every moment of doubt. She starts listening to her inner voice more than the noise around her. She invests her time in what feeds her soul instead of what drains it. She begins to realize that her life has meaning beyond pleasing others. Every talent she has, every battle she fought, every lesson she learned, none of it was random. It was shaping her into the woman she was always meant to become. When she steps into that purpose, she becomes unstoppable because she's no longer moving for applause. She's moving for destiny. And with purpose comes power. The real kind of power, not the kind people pretend to have. This power comes from self-awareness, discipline, and emotional maturity. She learns to control her reactions, protect her energy, and trust her decisions. She's not easily manipulated because she no longer needs anyone's approval to feel whole. She's not emotionally fragile because she's done the work to heal herself. Her power doesn't shout, it radiates. It shows up in how she speaks, how she thinks, how she walks away from what doesn't align with her. People start noticing the change. The same woman who once questioned her worth now carries herself like someone who knows exactly where she's going. The same woman who once tolerated disrespect now has boundaries made of steel. The same woman who once feared judgment now inspires others to rise. She becomes a mirror for every woman who lost herself trying to please the world. She becomes proof that once you stop chasing approval, you start attracting everything meant for you. She becomes powerful because she's no longer led by insecurity. She's led by intention. She's no longer driven by fear. She's driven by purpose. And she becomes dangerous to doubt, dangerous to limitations, dangerous to the old version of herself that once played small. She is the definition of growth in motion, purpose in action, and power awaken. Her self-respect elevates her standards, her circle, and her entire life because it becomes the foundation she builds everything on. When a woman understands her worth, she stops accepting anything that threatens her peace, her joy, or her growth. She begins to realize that self-respect is not just about how she treats herself, but about what she allows, what she entertains, what she tolerates, and what she walks away from. And when she raises that standard, her entire life rises with it. A woman who respects herself no longer negotiates her value with people who can't meet her at the level she's climbing to. She understands that respect is not something she should beg for, hint at, or hope for. It's something she requires. She stops giving discounts to people who only come into her life to drain her energy. She stops accepting apologies without changed behavior. She stops letting history keep her tied to people who no longer align with her future. She realizes that love without respect is chaos, loyalty without consistency is manipulation, and connection without growth is a cage. Her self-respect becomes a filter that protects her from all of that. Her standards rise, not because she's arrogant, but because she's finally awake. She knows what she brings to the table. She knows how hard she's worked to heal, to grow, to evolve. She knows the value of her time and the weight of her presence. She refuses to be in spaces where she has to question her worth or compete for basic decency. She understands that elevating her standards doesn't make her hard to love. It makes her impossible for the wrong people to keep. And that alone saves her years of heartache and wasted potential. Her circle changes too. Not everyone can go where she's going. Not everyone wants to grow the way she does. Not everyone has the courage to face their truth like she has. When she respects herself, she becomes more conscious of who she allows into her world. She gravitates toward people who uplift her, challenge her, and remind her of who she is. Not people who make her feel small. She values friendships that are built on honesty, alignment, and mutual respect. She stops sitting at tables where gossip is the main course and envy hangs in the air. She chooses relationships that reflect her growth, not her past wounds. And because she chooses differently, her life evolves. Her environment becomes healthier. Her opportunities become bigger. Her mindset becomes stronger. She stops surviving and starts living. She stops settling and starts thriving. She doesn't sabotage her blessings anymore because she finally believes she deserves them. She realizes that self-respect unlocks doors that self-doubt kept closed. It attracts experiences, relationships, and opportunities that match the frequency of her worth. People look at her and see the battle she fought to get here. They don't see the night she questioned everything, the moment she broke down, or the time she had to rebuild herself from scratch. But that's the beauty of a woman who knows her worth. Her story becomes her strength, not her shame. Her growth becomes her power, not her burden. Her evolution becomes her victory. She becomes dangerous because she refuses to betray herself again. She becomes powerful because she refuses to settle for less. She becomes inspiring because she becomes living proof that a woman's life changes the second she changes what she believes she deserves. Her self-respect doesn't just elevate her. It elevates every room she walks into. A woman who knows her worth becomes dangerous because she discovers a truth that many spend their whole lives searching for. Everything she needed was already within her. She stops living for the world and starts living for her purpose. She becomes the storm that can't be stopped, the light that can't be dimmed, the force that can't be ignored. Her journey isn't perfect, but it's powerful. Her path isn't easy, but it's hers. And every step she takes is a step toward becoming the strongest, most unapologetic version of herself. She is not dangerous because she destroys others. She is dangerous because she builds herself. She is not feared because she is ruthless. She is respected because she is wise. She is not powerful because she controls the world. She is powerful because she controls herself. Her worth becomes her voice, her shield, her energy, her direction. And once she locks into that identity, her life transforms in ways she once thought were impossible. So let this be the reminder she carries with her. She does not need permission to rise. She does not need validation to shine. She does not need approval to be extraordinary. All she needs is the courage to choose herself. honor herself, and believe in the woman she has become. Because when she knows her worth, she doesn't just change her life, she changes everything around her. That is the power. That is the danger. That is the woman she was always meant to